What's up, guys? It's Dominique, aka That Therapist. For those of you that don't know me, I'm the lead clinician and CEO for a group practice known as Yellowbird Counseling. Well, what is that? What is a Yellowbird Counseling? Well, our normal day to day activities include providing individual, couples, group, family therapy and or counseling in the state of Alabama to children, adolescents, teenagers, young adults, older adults, elders, basically the lifespan. We have a team of therapists that specialize in different areas so that we're able to help a wide variety of different folks. So we definitely encourage catering to our client's preference in their therapist and our therapist preference in client so that they have a successful therapeutic alliance. So that's what we do for our normal day-to-day activities. But what do we do here on social media? Well, on social media, we present live topics that the general population can relate to and tie it back to how we could all benefit from having a therapist outside of simply just having a mental illness. Because you know what the stigma is. Something has to be quote unquote wrong with you in order for you to see a therapist. And that's just simply not the case. As long as you're a human being that lives in a world that you can't control and has ideas and thoughts and interact with people that you can't control, you need a therapist because there could be a lot of clashing, bumping heads, and distress in dealing with other people, right? And in dealing with situations in the world that you can't control. Distress, trauma, and all sorts of things arise from very hard life circumstances that many of us share relationship in dealing with. So, my goal is to break the stigma behind mental health and wellness by sharing with you all ways that or reasons that you might seek a therapist outside of having a mental illness or something be wrong with you. So I was telling one of the other platforms, I was saying, hey, I've seen this theme in my personal clients that I work with in my practice. So I was wondering if it may be beneficial for me to just go on ahead and make it a topic at the top of the year, because a lot of people seem to be dealing with relational stressors. And some of that is the client and or the other person involved having issues with self-control. And also, I've seen where my clients are not necessarily familiar with what emotional abuse looks like. So sometimes they feel as though they're losing control. So it's very important for us when we're talking about abuse to talk about self-control, because oftentimes there is a lack of self-control for one or both parties. And so for us to be familiar with that, we can take action against it, know what we need to do to protect ourselves from emotional abuse and what that looks like for us. Again, all of this is general information, so definitely clear everything with your own personal therapist. If you're having trouble locating a personal therapist and you're in the state of Alabama, feel free to click the link in our bio so that you can get connected to someone on our team. And again, we personalize our therapists to our clients, meaning that we ask you what your preferences are before pairing you with the therapist. And we've also asked our therapists what their preferences are in population before we pair them with clients. So yeah, let's get started. First, of course, we need to do definitions. Ooh, my mouth is dry. Ooh, my mouth was so dry. All right. So first, let's clear up definitions. I want to first talk about what is self-control. Let's talk about that first. Yeah. Hold on. Because I had all my tabs up and I had them in order. Okay. Let's talk about it. I want us to get into it as far as what self-control is, okay? And this is a Psychology Today article. I love Psychology Today. It's a therapy directory platform that I'm on, and they also have a lot of literature for professionals. So yeah, this is, and it's reviewed by the Psychology Today staff. So that's real good. We love that. Thank you. Thank y'all for the shares. Yes, if y'all could just share and share and tap, tap, tap. That's all I really care about is the free stuff. If you want to give gifts, you can, but I really care about the free stuff. Thank you. Because my main concern is getting this word out, right? So if you could share and tap, that will help. Thank you. Appreciate you. Let's see. All right. So self-control, or the ability to manage one's impulses, emotions, and behaviors to achieve a long-term goal, right? So you don't just act in the moment. Somebody who exhibits self-control is able to think about how an impulsive action may affect themselves and others around them, right? It may affect them and others around them in a big way. So self-control is the ability to manage your impulses, to examine how it could affect yourself and others. Okay. This is what separates us from other animals in the animal kingdom, is self-control. Being able to not be a slave to our own animalistic instincts. We're able to choose if we want to engage in them or not. Self-control is primarily rooted in the prefrontal cortex, so up in here, right? The planning, problem solving, and decision making center of the brain, which is significantly larger in humans than in mammals, okay, than in other mammals like, dolphins and other mammals. The richest of nerve connections is in the prefrontal cortex, and enables people to plan, evaluate alternative actions, and ideally avoid doing things that they'll later regret, rather than immediately respond to every impulse as it arises. Let's look at real quickly. This just came up to me. Let's look at some activities that can affect the prefrontal cortex, okay? What that degrade, we'll say habits. How about that? Habits that degrade the prefrontal cortex, right? We want to know that real quick. We just want to know that real quick. What are some activities that degrade the prefrontal cortex? Okay, that's very important information, because if the prefrontal cortex is how we're able to establish and maintain self-control, we need for that to be working. So what are some things that cause it not to work appropriately? Let's look at that. This is I'm going to go over to Google Scholar, because again, I only like to use reliable information. So give me 1 second while I go over to Google Scholar to be sure that I get everything from reputable sources. Degrade the prefrontal cortex. Okay, we want to know that. on 2023, it's 2025. The prefrontal cortex, prefrontal control of actions and habits. Hold on, y'all. Give me a second. Let me look at this one. This is a 2024 peer review article, so it's more than relevant enough. But let me see if it has exactly what I'm looking for. I might need to look at, let me look at something. Okay, hold on. This literally just came up and I feel like it's important information. So sorry, y'all. I didn't expect to do this little neurological detour, but I think it's important because if the prefrontal cortex is where our brain houses the ability to establish and maintain self-control, we need to know behaviors that we engage in that may degrade how the prefrontal cortex operates. Right? Don't y'all think? Don't y'all think that makes sense? Let's see. I might have to come back to it. We may have to do that next time. Yeah, because hold on. Hold on, this is a reputable source. jeffersonhealth.org. But let's see. I was looking for specifically the prefrontal cortex, okay? But anyways, we want to know. And usually that is something that adult humans, they have, it's more developed because our brain develops this way. And so, that's where people are talking about at the age of 25, that whole development of the brain is completed. If you've heard people say that. But anyway, we want to know, we'll come back to what things can harm it. But anyways, the ability to implement and maintain self-control is housed in the prefrontal cortex. So if you want to go and look over it yourself as well, you can. All right, so the ability to regulate one's emotions and behavior is a key aspect of executive functioning, which again, people that have been in a lot of emotional distress or people that have been in any type of trauma, they're especially early in life, like in childhood, executive functioning could be something that has to be reestablished, and that is a reason that you would go to therapy if you notice having trouble with executive functioning, such as, don't worry, I'm gonna break it down a little more for y'all. I'm gonna break it down a little more. So, executive functioning describes a set of cognitive processes and mental skills that help individuals plan, monitor, and successfully execute their goals. We talk about executive functioning when we talk about emotional intelligence. Okay, so I mean that makes sense because this is all the same area, but the executive functions as they're known, include attentional control, working memory, like when you're doing something in the moment, your working memory, inhibition, and problem solving, many of which are thought to originate in the brain's prefrontal cortex. So there you go. Okay. There you go. So you see why it's very important for us to know how to preserve the prefrontal cortex. I believe that excessive use of social media is one thing that degrades it, but don't quote me on that. Don't quote me on that because I can't remember if that was the part of the brain. I know that it does degrade cognitive functioning, right? But specifically, is it the prefrontal cortex? I'd have to look it up. Okay. But let's keep moving. Let's keep going. All right, so there's an ongoing debate surrounding the degree in which self-control is an innate individual difference versus a learned skill. That I can see how that would get tricky. Most experts believe that people who are disposed to lower levels of less self-control can cultivate healthy habits and take countermeasures to control their behavior. I believe that. If an individual is willing to work on their self, if an individual is willing to see their self, then there is an opportunity to establish self-control that they may not have learned or were nurtured with, right? Or maybe even whatever the reason that their nature isn't self-control, right? So then you have those kids with differing attachment disorders that cause them to act out, or just differing other things that cause them to act out. And even just kids that aren't diagnosed with anything, because again, their brain is still learning how to function. So you may see children having difficulty with learning self-control. So it's very important how the parent teaches that to them. And one of those ways is how the parent models it themselves. Okay? So if you're a parent, one of the fastest ways to help your child learn self-control is for you to exhibit it. Okay? That's another discussion. Always avoid situations where you know you will confront temptations. For instance, if you're tempted to eat junk food, stay away from fast food restaurants and don't bother heading down the snack or baked goods aisle at the supermarket. Avoiding triggers is key, okay? But you may not know how to avoid triggers because you may not know what your triggers are. Or when your triggers when you do engage your triggers, again, you see, we're going to move from self-control, right? Because there's a lot of impulse management and self-control. And if you're being triggered, if you're not working on your triggers, you're going to get triggered a lot quicker, okay? As an EMDR therapist, that is one of the things that we work on, is desensitizing and reprocessing trauma or distress so that those triggers you don't lose yourself, right? You're not responding out of those triggers. You're able to exhibit more self-control. So this is very important when we talk about the discussion of emotional abuse, because emotional abusers are going to look for people that have not who have not worked on their insecurities. They can smell those insecurities, right? Whether you talk about them or not, it's just all in how you move. So if you have not worked on things that trigger you, it's going to be a lot harder for you to notice when you are being emotionally abused, okay? Right? And you're not going to know what to avoid. You're not going to know what to avoid. Let's see. Are there any questions? Nope. All right, let's keep it going. Y'all keep sharing. Perfect. Okay. Let me see if there's any questions over here before I keep going. None. I don't think there are any. All right, let's keep it moving. Let's keep it popping. All right. Okay. Whether the temptation is controlled substances, food, or scrolling through Twitter instead of working, everyone has domains in life in which they wish they could exercise a little more willpower. Okay. How can an individual build this critical skill? Research points to the use of rewards, routines, and mindfulness practices. Remember, we talked about mindfulness as possible ways to establish better habits and regulate behavior over the long term. Okay? Because that's what we want to do. We want to regulate our behavior consistently. And if you're thinking that this is hard, that is definitely fair. I'm sure there are more people than not that are saying that this is hard. And so this is where a therapist comes into play and can help you establish your skills to maintain self-control. Of course, developing awareness to triggers, but sometimes, again, therapy is the best place for you to learn how to establish those or establish awareness of those. So with that, let's move over into let's see, was there anything else on self-control? Another reason that learning self-control is a good thing for us to outline, or if you're having trouble with it, is because of those goals that you wanted to make for New Year's, the goals that you wanted to maintain. If you don't have self-control, you're not going to be able to maintain them. So if self-control is something that you need to learn in this new year, that's what you go to therapy for. Tell the therapist, I want to learn how to maintain self-control so that I can execute my goals and stay committed to them. Okay? They'll help you. I promise. All right. So what is the problem with lack of self-control? People who lack self-control often give in to impulsive behaviors and emotions as well. This means that they may make poor choices that harm themselves or others and react poorly when they don't get what they want. Ooh, this is leading us into the discussion of emotional abuse. Let me run that last sentence back. This means that people who lack self-control often give in to impulsive behaviors and emotions as well. This means that they make poor choices that harm themselves or others and react poorly when they don't get what they want. Imagine a toddler who wants something, but the parent says no. Often the initial reaction is to behave impulsively. They may throw a tantrum and hit and scream. Toddlers are still learning to regulate their emotions and respond appropriately when things don't go their way. The same is true for people of all ages. Self-control is an important skill to develop because these same emotions occur in any person who feels that their needs or desires are not being met. However, a person who lacks self-control may respond in a variety of ways, including with anger, physical violence, or by turning to unhealthy coping mechanisms. Ecclesiastes 7 verse 9 says, do not be quickly provoked in your spirit, for anger resides in the lap of fools. Let me run it back one more time. Ecclesiastes chapter 7 verse 8 says, do not be quickly provoked in your spirit, for anger resides in the lap of fools. Okay? I think that appropriately wraps up our little discussion on the self-control portion. Is there any questions that y'all have about it? Any questions at all about self-control before we move on to how this ties into emotional abuse? Anything. All right. Let's see. Thank you. I appreciate you. All right, perfect. So let's get on over into this emotional abuse, okay? Let's see. All right. So first we need to identify what even is emotional abuse. Okay. People say things, they don't know what it means. So what is it? What is emotional abuse? All right. Emotional abuse is a pattern of behaviors where one person repeatedly subjects another person to nonviolent acts of aggression or manipulation that negatively affect their well-being. People who experience emotional abuse may experience several mental health consequences like low self-esteem, self-doubt, depression, and anxiety. If you are experiencing emotional abuse, it's important to keep in mind that someone else's behaviors are never your fault. Let's start there, okay? We just talked about self-control and how self-control impacts individuals and the people around them. Lack of self-control can lead to these abusive behaviors and people making you feel as though it's your fault that they behave a certain way when really it's on them to establish and maintain their own self-control, just like it is on you to establish and maintain your own self-control, and figure out why you would even want to be in a situation where someone is causing you to feel less than, right? Let's talk about the types of emotional abuse. Isolating is a type, attempting to disconnect you from your loved ones or dictating who you can talk to or spend time with. Threatening is another emotionally abusive tactic. Making threats to hurt you, your kids, your pets, or even themselves for the purpose of instilling fear about your safety or the safety of someone you care about. So threatening. Withholding. Refusing to give love, affection, attention, support, or anything else that you need to survive or feel love, which may often leave you feeling like you don't matter or aren't good enough. So when someone purposely withholds affection from you, whether that be physical or verbal, however affection you receive affection and that person knows it and they intentionally withhold it from you, that's emotional abuse. Belittling, also emotional abuse. Minimizing your thoughts, feelings, or beliefs, which can cause low self-esteem, right? So you see how an abuser wants to find someone who is easily triggered, because when the abuser starts doing their behaviors, they can just blame it on the victim. So it's important for the victim to also establish self-control, so that when an abuser tries to come for their triggers, they're not able to. They're unable to, and the victim is able to stand up for themselves. That is where therapists can come in. If you have been victimized or have dealt with distress or trauma in your life, that can make it hard for you or make it easy for you to be triggered, because abusers are going to look for people that have unresolved hurts so they can trigger them and get their personal needs met, which the abuser also lacks self-control because they're doing these behaviors to be harmful to someone else, right? Belittling, minimizing your thoughts, feelings, or beliefs, which can cause low self-esteem. Criticizing, making critical remarks about your skills, appearance, or choices as an attempt to belittle your confidence. Okay? This is very important. Criticizing is very emotionally abusive when it is done by way of making remarks about your skills, appearance, or choices as an attempt to belittle your confidence, right? Blaming, placing blame on you for accidents, disagreements, or challenges in the relationship to convince you that you are the problem. Blaming is also a form of emotional abuse. Placing blame on you for accidents, disagreements, or challenges in the relationship to convince you that you are the problem. Anybody this sounding familiar to anyone? Shaming, making you feel embarrassed or ashamed about something, such as your weight, the way you look, or your actions, right? Making remarks, mean remarks about your weight, the way you look, or actions that you might engage in. Gaslighting, pretending not to hear you or understand what you're talking about, telling you that you're overreacting or being dramatic or questioning your reality. Gaslighting is a big one. Gaslighters are very cunning at that skill. It is a very insidious behavior because it degrades a person from the inside out. So you must be aware of what gaslighting is and know it, so that you can know what you fall susceptible to, right? Again, to establish your own self-control and know how to avoid being gaslit. Let's talk about what gaslighting is one more time. Pretending not to hear you or understand what you're talking about, telling you that you're overreacting or being dramatic and questioning your reality. Humiliating, another form of emotional abuse. Erecting dominance or making themselves feel superior to you by making jokes at your expense or using a sensitive topic to embarrass you. Manipulating, using guilt trips or making statements that play on your emotions in order to get you to do what they want. Crazy making, denying something really happened, which causes you to doubt your perceptions or memory and may even make you feel delirious or hysterical. Any questions? Any questions? We can definitely keep it moving. All right, so now we've talked about it. Do you see how lack of self-control from the victim and the abuser can cause a situation where emotional abuse can be fostered? I'm more so talking to the victims, because the abusers are probably not going to say, oh yeah, I do that. I do gaslight. I do, yeah. They're probably not. The likelihood is low unless something happens that really affects them and they have no choice but to directly tie it back to their own behavior. But other than that, they're going to always shift blame. In emotional abuse situations, the blame is always going to be shifted to you. So your own self-control, while it is extremely difficult, is going to benefit you in that situation with an abuser. Not being so quick. And one of those things is realizing that what is done to you is not because of you. What the abuser is doing to you is not because of you. And learning how to walk in that. And that's going to take a lot of help from a therapist. Okay? It is. That's a hard thing for someone that you love and someone that you've invested time and energy into you. Tongue-tied, that you have invested time and energy into, to make you feel as though you're a problem for them, right? That's hurtful. And so that's very difficult to maintain control in such a vulnerable situation where someone has, again, fed on you from the inside out, first making you question your own reality, then making you question your own thoughts and your own emotions and your own responses when they do things. A lot of times people that are emotionally abusive, they do things to provoke you on purpose, right? The crazy making. They do things to provoke you on purpose to get you to respond. Very manipulative. They push your buttons on purpose so that you can respond, and then they can blame you for it. Blame you for your response when they know in their lack of heart of hearts that they did that to elicit a response for you so that you can look like the bad guy. Another example of that is Darvo. Deny. I'm sorry, I just drew a blank. But another example of that is Darvo. Deny, attack, reverse, victim, offender. So it's like the offender, when the victim confronts the attacker denies their attack. They then come in their denial, they come at the victim and say, no, it's your fault and it's your blah, 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 blah. And then they reverse their self to the victim and the offender, or they reverse their self to the victim and make the victim the offender, right? And so now the victim is left feeling like they're the one that needs to apologize and do something different, when really the abuser can't accept responsibility for their actions. So they Darvo them as a way to manipulate them out into holding responsibility for what should be theirs. I know that was a mouthful, but y'all got what I was saying, right? Deny, attack, reverse, victim, offender. Okay. Any questions? Do you see where you, as a victim, or even possibly as an offender, but more so for the victims, do you see why it would be important for you to establish a therapeutic relationship so you can learn how to maneuver through these situations, separate yourself from the offender? Because what they're doing to you is not your fault, but they're going to try their damnedest to make you believe that it is, right? Right? So I hope this was helpful. Was this helpful? This is helpful to anyone? I really wanted to talk about that. And I just wanted to talk about it briefly to give people things to consider, especially with starting the new year. And I tied the two topics together because it seems to have been a theme. So that's why I tied them together. That's why. All right. Any questions? I just wanted to give y'all a little tippy taste. Tippy taste. Okay. All right. Well, I hope that was digestible for y'all. Again, if you're looking for therapy services in the state of Alabama, please click the link in our bio on all our social media platforms, or Google Yellowbird Counseling and we should come up. I hope that you guys continue to have a great new year. And